Hello guys, how are you doing? I hope everyone doing good. Okay, after I released my last video, I got like 10-15 questions. Most of those are kind of a close, kind of a similar. I'm not surprised by that because that was a topic, kind of a topic, most abused, most misunderstood, and most confused topic kind of in the last decade. So I'm not surprised by you asking that question from me. So what was that question? What is oAuth and what is OpenID Connect? How these two connect together and what is the difference and what are the use cases? When to use what? Okay, so in this video we are going to talk about that in very simple English, right? Not too technical jargons, but I'm going to explain why and when and how. Also, what is the difference? Why this OpenID Connect and OAuth2 both are in the game? Okay, so before that, I must tell you, you guys are really good, awesome. You are giving me now likes, comments, and I saw a few people sharing my videos too. Thank you very much for everything because that is a way you silently can help me to the things what I am giving you, right? I'm creating content for you to teach something where you probably don't know, probably didn't understand or something like that, whatever. So if you're interested on this video, please click on thumbs up, and also if you have something to tell, put a comment and share this video in the community. Also subscribe if you're not subscribed. Even though you subscribe, if you're not click on the bell icon, go ahead and click that, right? Google says remind this to you on every video, so I'm doing that. Okay, I'm listening to Google. Okay, so what is this OAuth and OpenID Connect story, right? So let me to tell you history a little bit, right? I started coding almost since 23, 4. That was my graduation years, and like those since then, I'm doing coding and almost since 2007 8 I was doing some production system and everything. Ever since then I am on this field. So I have seen this transition from very beginning to what we are here right now. So I can explain. So before, like in like 26, 7, 8, those, I mean 26 mean 2008, 6, those days, we use something called form, right? Form authentication. What does mean? We keep username and password on our database, of course in a hash format, and then user send the username and password. We verify that. The problem is when you do that, now if you think now you have maybe account in a 20-30 websites, right? So you have to use 20-30 different username and password to all those websites. If you don't use if you use the same account, if one website compromised, your entire account, all the website get compromised, right? So to solve this problem, there was a need of some solution to solve this problem. For example, in like early days, you had something like hi-fi and kind of those social media before the Facebook, right? So now Facebook, but before the Facebook, there was a few social media website. So when they wants you to like communicate to your friends, for example, let's say you are creating a account on an ABC website, right? Let's say hi-fi, right? Hi-fi didn't do that, but let's say hi-fi. So if you're creating a profile on a hi-fi, if you want like to invite your friends, what the hi-fi do is they're asking your Gmail username and password. Just believe me, yes, they did ask your Gmail. I mean, not the hi-fi exactly, right? So they ask your email and the password of the email, right? So what they do is they just log into your account, and then they get your contact, and then they send invite across the board, right? So that's what they did. So I mean, that's not wrong, right? I mean, it's wrong when you look at that today, but those days it's not big deal. But today, if your account, if you give username and password of your email account, that kind of end of the world, right? Because your banking account detail, so your health information detail, your insurance detail, everything, probably your romantic life and everything is in your Gmail account, right? So you don't like to give that to anyone else. So today world, that's not going to fit. So Now, so now people were using like different workaround, but oAuth came in to solve this problem, right? So the first question was oAuth 0 or oAuth 1 or whatever you call, right? But I'm not going to talk about that because that is dead now, okay? So we are going to talk about oAuth 2, right? So how oAuth 2 solve this problem, right? So I have a small diagram for you, right? So this will easy to understand, right? So oAuth 2 is a token based authorization protocol, right? So this is very important, authorization protocol. So we are going to talk about this the later, right? I'm not going to talk about this technical theoretical stuff, right? You can stop the screen and you can watch those, but rather I'm going to explain you how this exactly work, right? So before we go into these diagrams and everything, we need to understand why oAuth came and what is the problem it's going to solve. Okay, the problem we already discussed, right? So I create a profile on my Hi-Fi website, right? Hi-Fi needs to send email to my friend saying, hey, Krish is on Hi-Fi, please come around and hang around his profile, right? So Hi-Fi website wants to send email to my friend on behalf of me, right? That means Hi-Fi wants to access my account on behalf of me, but I don't like to give my password to Hi-Fi, right? So that is the problem oAuth going to solve, right? So how oAuth going to solve this problem? So oAuth, in the oAuth world, oAuth paradigm, we have someone called resource owner, right? Resource owner in our example is me, right? So and we have an authorization server, right? We don't know what is that yet, so keep it side. And we have a client. Who is the client? Client is Hi-Fi, the website, the social media website, right? And then we have something called resource server, right? We don't know that yet, but keep that for a side, okay? So now what it does is resource owner, right? So give consent to authorization server, right? We're granting the client to the Hi-Fi website to access the resource server, right? In that case, let's say my Gmail contact, right? So now the resource server verifying that access with the authorization server and then give the access. So in this entire cycle, we are going to go in more detail. That's what the abstract one, right? We have few terminologies. That's what you made confused with my last video, right? So one is an access token. Access token is the token which tells about you and what little bit about your what you can do. For example, your probably your roles and your permission and stuff, right? And there's a refresh token. The refresh token is a token where you can use to exchange, right? You can get new access token when the access token is expired, right? Usually access token lifetime probably like a 30 minutes or 60 minutes, right? So they do that to make sure if someone is stolen, right, hijack your access token, they don't get access to your account, right? So whenever access token is expiring, you can use a refresh token to obtain a new access token, right? That's where access token, refresh token comes, right? So then we have something called client ID secret. I'm not going to go deep into that, and scope. I'm going to explain, but not now. And there's something called JOT, or else known as a JWT, JSON Web Token. So that is a token where we put all those information and encode it. It's just a basic 64 encoded string. You can decode it at any point. Okay. So now let's see the general flow of this entire process, right? So now we have a client. Client send a request to the resource owner, right? For example, let's say now I logged into my Hi-Fi account. I create my, I mean, you can think Hi-Fi or Yelp or anything, right? This is a social media website, and you can go to Hi-Fi website and create your profile. And now you are saying, hey, I want to invite to my friends, right? So now client, my Hi-Fi is sending a request to the resource owner to me, hey, can I access your Gmail contact or something like that? Okay. So now me automatically getting redirected to my authorization server. In that case, let's say probably Gmail server, right? So Gmail server now validate my username and password. I'm okay to give my username and password to Gmail because that is their username and password, right? I can give my username and password of Facebook account to Facebook, right? I'm not scared to do that. I can give my Twitter username and password to Twitter, right? Because it's their account, right? So anyway, they have it. So I'm going to give that, and then the authorization server issue a token, right, to the client. Keep in mind, this is not the exact flow, right? This is again abstract flow. I'm going to the exact flow in next slide, right? So token to the client. So now the client does this. Client send the token to the resource owner. Okay, the resource server, sorry, not the resource owner, resource server, right? Resource server send this token to authorization server to validate. It's asking, hey, did you issue this token, right? So resource authorization server say, yes, I showed this token, right? So now the resource server delivering the resource to client, right? So put this into the real example. We are going to do that in the next slide, right? Okay. So then there are a few grant types: authorization code grant type, client credential grant type, implicit password, and device code, right? Authorization code grant type is the widely used grant type, right? I probably do another video about that, because in last video I did part 1 of the security in SJS, right? I'm going to do the part 2 probably in few days, right? So then client credential is a one other flow, right? Implicit is a flow. I'm going to explain that in the next slide, because you need to learn about the back channel and the front channel to talk about the implicit, right? And the password grant type usually we don't use, but it's also used sometime, right? But I'll explain that too, right? Here's the real use case, right? So let's say now client send a request to authorization server, right? Let's say client is a hi-fi, my website, and send the authorization request to Google authorization server. Now we are going to send the emails, right? So now authorization server pop up me and like dialog box and say, hey, hi-fi is going to access your contact list, right? Are you okay with this, right? So now so I have so many things with the Gmail. I have my contacts, my calendar, my email, my chats and everything. But out of that, hi-fi asking to access only my contact. This is very important, right? So if I give my username and password, they get access to everything. But here, they're only getting access to my contact. Okay, that's the important point. Okay, so now I'm saying, yeah, it's okay, right? So now, authorization server send a code. Important, right? Important, right? Put in a red line. Important. It is not a token. It's in the code, right? I'll explain why. So now, the token, the client again send the token request to authorization server, right? First, it's in the code. Now, client say, hey, I don't need this. Send me the token. It's into the authorization server. Keep in mind, it's a dash line, okay? Pay attention over there. And then authorization server send the token, right? So now client does is, client send the token to resource server, right? So when the client send the token to resource server validate this token against authorization server, right? If it is a bare token, if it is just access token, they have to talk to authorization server and get their profile or whatever their claims and everything. If it is a JWT token, it depends how the architecture design, right? Probably you may have everything, certificates and the keys with you to validate the token, right? If you don't have, you have to talk to authorization server, get the certificate or their keys, right? If not, if you have that already in your application, you don't have to talk to authorization server at all. You can verify the key yourself, okay? So now that is done. So now you validate the token. So the token is validated. Now you are delivering resource to the client. Okay, if we apply this to our use case, now hi-fi is going to send the email on behalf of me. Hi-fi send the request to authorization server. Hey, can I access Krish's email? Authorization server asking me, that is called consent screen, right? They are going to access your email contact list. Are you okay with it? I'm saying yes, right? So now authorization server send a code to the hi-fi, right? Hi-fi says, no, I need a token. So it come back to authorization server, right? So now authorization server give the token, right? So now hi-fi send the token to my the Google contacts server, right? Wherever the contact list hosted, right? And then it deliver the contact, right? So what are the confusing point? Here's the thing: Google contacts is Google, and you are asking the password and the username, the token also from Google. So now a lot of people get confused. Authorization server and resource server are same. No, it's not same, right? For now, just think Authorization server is some sort of a server what Google has where you have all the user accounts, right? The contact server is a different server where I hosted in a different location probably, right? So they don't talk to each other, okay? So now what you do is you talk to Google's authorization server and get your credential validated and get a token, and you give that token back to contact and asking, hey, can you give this to me? Okay, right. So now everything is fine, right? So what are these different flows, right? So what are these different grant types? Okay, so here's how it works. So now what we discuss is here is the authorization code flow. This is ideal when client, as I mean me, the resource owner, don't trust the client, right? For example, let's say in my company there is something like a rave application. I can appreciate someone, right? I can send a rave to someone saying, hey, you did a great job, right? But if they ask my Facebook profile to log in to rave application, I don't like to give it, right? I don't want to give my Facebook username and password to my office application because I don't trust these people, right? They may save that in the database, right? How I know that? So in that case, I don't trust, as a resource owner, I don't trust the client. So I'm not giving my credential to my office application because Facebook is my personal account. In other hand, right? In other hand, my office, let's say they have the same rave application. I can send the raves. So they're asking my office email and office account password, right? My corporate user credentials, right? So now I can give it because why? Because those account belongs to my office. This application also developed by office, right? Is the responsibility is office. So it is okay to give my username and password to that application. So as a resource owner, I can trust this application, the client, right? So in that case, you can use a password grant type, right? In that case, you can use the password grant type. In the previous example, when I, as a resource owner, when I don't trust the client, I cannot use password grant type. I should use authorization code grant type. So how, let's say the rave application use authorization code grant type. Then they will have a button called login with the Facebook. Now they don't ask my Facebook username and password. Instead of that, they redirect me to Facebook, right? And now Facebook asking my username and password. When I say yes, they send the token or a code back to the rave application, right? So keep in mind, credentials are never transmitted over the wire or anywhere, right? Your clients never see the credentials of the resource owner. If I give my username and password to Facebook, Facebook never send my password back to my rave application, right? So now you know the use cases, right? When the resource owner trusts your client, your application, right? They don't hesitate to give the credentials. You can use the password grant type. When they don't trust, you need to use authorization code grant type, right? So now the other question usually ask, why you have a token request separately? Why you just send the code first and then you send the code back to me and again send the token, right? Doesn't make sense. Authorization server send the code to the client send the code back to authorization server server send the token, right? Why are we doing this? Why you can't directly send the token first, right? So here's the problem. Now most of the time we are dealing this with the web applications, right? You know, if anything in the web application, you can right click and go to a view source and you can see everything what they use, right? And there are tricks and you can see all the JavaScript codes and everything because it's in the client side. So if you give the token, directly, if you get the token directly from the front end, right, then the problem is someone can see your credentials. Credentials mean when you register client with your authorization server, right? So what happens internally? So the authorization server register your client, your app, and give you a client ID and a secret, right? They give you a client ID and a secret. To obtain the code, you only need to give your client ID, right? In the first request, you send the request, check with the resource owner, get the consent, and then send the code. To this flow, you only need to give the client ID, right? But to obtain the token, you need to provide the client secret. So what usually do is, when we get the code, some backend service talk to authorization server again and exchange this code with the token, right? Front end do not send this token request. Why? Because token request is kind of a secured. It's asking your client credentials, I mean the applications, client ID, and the secret as well, right? We call it a back channel. So we have a front channel and the back channel, right? So that's why I created like a straight line with the front channel and the dotted line, the dash line with the back channel. Okay. So but sometimes you may don't have a back end. You may only have a front end, right? So in that case, you don't have anyone to send this token request, right? Secure request. So in that case, you can use implicit flow. You can directly ask token, right? So first request, you go to the consent, and as a number 4, you won't get the code. You will directly get access token. Okay, so that is the way why this code and token comes, because I have seen developers take in the code and then again the front end itself obtaining access token. That is wrong, right? Because that is secure. Anyone can take your client ID and secret, then they can act like you, right? Okay, I'll give an example. So let's say, for somehow I am getting to know Facebook Messenger apps client ID and a secret, right? Let's say for some way I'm getting it. I know the Facebook Messenger apps client ID and the secret. Then what I can do is I can create a different app and I can send this request to Facebook authorization server sending, hey, I'm this client. So when I provide the client ID and a secret, Facebook's authorization server understand my application as a messenger and granting whatever the resources it's supposed to grant, right? It's really dangerous. So do not expose your client's secret at any manner to outside. Okay? So I hope you understand that. So now the next question. Okay, next question is, what is the OIDC, OpenID Connect, and what is the role of OIDC in this entire drama or entire this oAuth flow, right? So the simple answer is none. But then why does it exist? Okay, so let me to explain. So as I explained before, oAuth came in to solve the problem where I don't need to disclose my credentials to strange application to access my resources, right? So now, so what they have done, the Facebook, the Google, and some other providers, what they have done is, when this oAuth came into the picture, they realized, oh, this is nice. We can get this to give the sign in with feature, right? Sign in with Facebook, right? Sign in with Google or something like that. So if you experience that little button, what you see in the website, that is that one, right? But oAuth is not mean to or not designed to handle authentication, right? It is an authorization protocol, right? Because if you remember why it is came, because Hi-Fi want to access my Google contacts to send emails, right? If I cannot give my username and password, because then they can do whatever they want with my Gmail account, right? My Google account, right? So they can access my photos, they can access my contact, calendar, everything. But I want to limit what they can do. So that means authorization, right? Authentication means who you are. Authorization is what you can do, right? 1 million time in my videos, right? So, so now they came to solve authorization problem, right? So they want to tell, they want me to tell what Hi-Fi can do on my Gmail account. It is not authentication, but the Google, the Facebook, and the giant tech companies, they were using oAuth to handle the authentication as well, right? But it is not mean to do that. So OIDC came in to solve this problem and make this misuse is kind of a formal use, right? So what they have done is they put OpenID Connect, like as you see this in picture, Right? It's a very small portion of this entire OAuth paradigm, right? What they do is they handle authentication part, right? There is no magic happening here, right? So OAuth use something called scope, what I'm going to explain next, and OIDC has a separate scope called OpenID, right? So that we can use to authenticate users, right? So along with that, bundling OIDC and OAuth2 together, you can use this to authentication and authorization both, right? So if someone asks what is OAuth2? OAuth2 is an authorization protocol, right? Can it handle authentication? No, it cannot, but with OpenID Connect, it can handle authentication as well. So then what is OpenID Connect, OIDC? OIDC is a protocol where talk about the authentication and support OAuth2 to handle the authentication before the authorization. Okay, who you are and what you can do. Okay, how they do this? So they have something called scope, right? They have something called scope. Okay, so let's jump from 2006 to 2021 with the latest stack, right? So let's say I'm going to design a to-do application. Okay, I'm going to design a to-do application. In my to-do application, we have create, read, update, delete operations you can do, right? So now I have my application. So now some other company want to implement a mobile app for this my to-do system, right? To-do application system. So in that mobile app, they mainly want to give the view to do feature, right? So in that case, user can wake up in the morning and see, hey, what are the to do for my day? Okay. So now there is a user who registered with my application and he has a tons of to-do list. Okay. So now same time he used that mobile application. Okay. So now he don't want to give his credential to the mobile application because it's a third-party application. Right, so this to-do list is maintained by my company, let's say Code Labs, but there is other company, XYZ company, they have the mobile application, right? So user don't want to give my credentials, the Code Lab account credential into that third-party company web application, right? So they have a button called Sign In with Code Labs, right? They redirect them to me, right? So now before this happened, that's a user perspective. Before this happened, this particular company need to talk to me, hey, I want to integrate with you. Then say, okay, good, let us create a client, right? So I'm creating a client on my authorization server and I give them a client ID and a secret, right? Client ID and a secret to that mobile app company, right? So now whenever the user come and want to sign in with Code Labs, they are going to redirect the user to my authorization server providing their client ID. Right, providing their client ID. So now this to-do application has 4 operations to do. We call these are the 4 scopes. Scopes are nothing but what you can do, right? So you can say to do read, to do create, to do update, to do delete. Those are the 4 permissions, also known as in the OAuth world scopes, right? Sometimes we say scope is a collection of claims, but in general scopes is kind of a permission. It's easy to understand when you map like that, right? So now that mobile app asking a permission to read the to do, right? So whenever redirect, I am my authorization server sending a request to consent screen to the users. Hey, this mobile application want to read your to do. Are you allowing to do that? Right? So that is the same thing when you sign into Facebook, right? They give you a notification, right? Sometimes you don't read that, right? It says, this application, this game, I want to access your public profile, email address, friend list, and so, right? So you have to read that and then you have to give the consent, right? So now my authorization server give a token to that mobile app where they have permission to read the to-dos, okay? So now I have separate my to-do server, right? The hosted server. They send the token to the to-do server and asking, hey, can you give me a to-do list which belongs to this server, right? So now a to-do server will extract the token and see who the user is. And then, okay, he's asking to read the to-do and his scope is, has a read, so it deliver. Now, this one of the developer or someone stealing this token, they are trying to delete the to-do. Right? So now they send the request to the authorization, my resource server or else my to-do server saying, hey, I want to delete this to-do. Right? Now my resource server check the token. Token has only scope for read. Right? So therefore, this request will deny it. The request will not complete. Why? Because this token carrying only permission, authorization, what they can do for only to read to-dos. Right? If they want to delete the to-do, they need to get a new token from the authorization server which has a permission or a scope for a delete to-do. Okay, so I'm sorry I didn't have any diagrams or any animation or any fancy things to explain that, but it's simple to demonstrate. Okay, but I hope you understand. Scope is not a fancy thing; it's just a permission, right? It's how OAuth tells the application what they can do. Okay. So this is, I was thinking this is like a 10 minutes video, but looks like it went over 30 minutes. I'm sorry about it, but I hope you learn a lot. Then we'll see you in the next video. Make sure you subscribe and click on the bell icon as well. Don't forget to share the video. Stay safe. Take care. Until we see again.